Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining this next episode of In the Nick of Time. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I was going to ask you a question. Every time I have guests and I have this little 30 seconds video before we get started, I see my guests like me do a little dance. Are you also doing a little dance before when you listen to us? Because this is always something I do. And I try to not laugh when the show starts, but I'm always laughing like an idiot. So I wanted to know if you also are dancing. And if you're dancing, put it into the comment section so we know what's going on with this little music. All right. Few reminders before we get started with Tracy. First, please register for the mailing list if you've not done that. You go to inthenickofTime.tv. You're going to be able to put your email so you can get notifications for the next shows, but also the videos. The next show will be very interesting. We're going to be talking about identity management, both for person entity and non-person entity, so people and computers, microservices, and so on, with a top expert in the industry is going to join us next week. So we'll be announcing that today on LinkedIn as well. That's going to be fun for next week. All right. Also, thanks so much for subscribing. If you've subscribed to the channel at youtube.com/Nicolas Chelon, please do that if you've not. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That will be very fun. 615, 10 days, not bad, but we can do a little bit better, okay? So please help us get there. If you want to share and make sure your friends know about the show. We're going to be posting special videos now every week on very technical subjects. The next one is going to be a kind of introduction to Kubernetes. Then we're going to start digging into more complex, more technical subject like service mesh, zero trust architecture, and what are the key components of zero trust, modern cyber posture with moving target defense, zero trust, and continuous monitoring with behavior prevention. So all these things will be a pretty deep dive, about 5 to 10 minute segments on the show. So that's going to be on YouTube only. So check it out as well. If you're here and you want to share who you're with, please put your name and your company and, say you're here so we can highlight you on the screen. Always good to see most of you, Gerald. I see Christoph. I see also Yolanda and many others joining us almost every week. I really appreciate that. This is always exciting for me. All right. Also, last thing, we released the first video on the channel, the top 5 DevSecOps tools of 2022. If you want to see what are my top 5 for 22, we will be doing another video on the main DevSecOps tools to have a complete holistic DevSecOps pipeline, because obviously you cannot get to DevSecOps only with 5 tools. That's my top 5, but probably the best return on investment. But you need more tools to get to DevSecOps. So we're going to be doing a video showing the full pipeline, the full life cycle, from the planning to the development, the building, the security scanning, the operations monitoring, and alerting, and so on. So check that out in a few weeks. Also, wanted to share that I'm going to be speaking at the F5 Public Sector Symposium, the 19th. If you want to join us, it's going to be virtual, but it's also going to be on site. So if you want to get back in person and come say hi, I'll be at the Ritz-Carlton in Tyson's Corner in Virginia. That's going to be fun. Also, the topic of the conference is pretty broad, but my keynote will be about modern cyber posture and the 3 pillars we talked about: moving target defense, zero trust, and continuous monitoring, behavior prevention, not just CV scanning. So that's going to be fun. Also, that's tomorrow. We have the conference on the cyber satellite in Paris. If you couldn't go to Paris, that's too bad. I'm not going to be in Paris either. I couldn't make it, so that's okay. But you can still watch virtually, so you can do that. It's going to be pretty interesting because we're going to do deep dives on the cyber space around satellites and what happened with Viasat in Ukraine. So that's pretty cool. So that's SciSat tomorrow. I think it's going to be pretty early for the US. I'm going to have to wake up pretty early, but it's going to be, I think my keynote is at 7:30 Eastern. So All right, now let's get into the real meat. Okay, I have a very good friend, awesome person all around with Tracy, and I'm gonna bring her on the screen in a second. Here we go, and I always put you on top. Here we go. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good to see you.
So the answer is yes. I was dancing during the intro, and anybody who knows me knows that I would dance during the intro. So
right?
Music gets stuck in my head. Yeah, it's not bad. It's catchy.
Isn't it funny how a short video with the same tone is still making you dance? It's pretty cool. All right, so let me introduce you, and then you'll give us your own quick introduction as well. So Tracy is the senior principal at MITRE, of course, and she's very accomplished. She's and you've seen maybe recently a post on architecture, and I totally agree. I don't know why someone would think you don't need architects in DevSecOps. That's a recipe for disaster. But what you get, that's what you get from incompetent government people. I'm sorry. DevSecOps, of course, DevSecOps Advisor. You worked with us for many years, looking at software factories and Kessel Run and Platform One and so on. You obviously have a specialty in cloud native, decoupled architectures, data ops, DevSecOps, of course. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And I like that you added you walks the walk and talks the talk. I said that when I came out, that I was tired of people that, unlike you, don't do it. So that's cool. You're passionate, of course, about mentoring and training. And you've done so much for on the education side and the training side, and help the other side of MITRE to create the digital DNA stack, and of course you're lecturing in universities and so many cool things you do as a speaker, as a moderator, events. We've been on so many events together. And yeah, you have, of course, certifications, but who doesn't have certifications?
The world has certifications. That's true.
Some are good, some are less good, right? But so if people want to follow you, you're on LinkedIn, but you have your own website with Tracy Bannon, tech, TECH. That's for people that want to follow you. But first, and I have several people that reached out in private. Some people don't put the comments, the question in public. They sometimes a little shy. Okay. So and Yolanda loves your pink hair. Who doesn't love your pink hair? And we have a story about that too, right?
I do.
First, let you. I'm going to let you give us your journey.
Well, it's interesting that it's true. I have a degree in software engineering, but it was a journey to get there. My undergrad, I started at the university, Indiana University, as a comp sci major. I was a 4.0 student. I was happy as a clam. And my brother and I went to DC and went to a conference on computer graphics. And I got to tell you, it bit me. I was so taken on the possibility of what we could do with graphics, with trying to integrate different domains. And this was not focused on defense. This was early in my career. My brother's a building architect. My father bought an architecture firm. He's a school superintendent, and they were building schools. And I was thinking about, how can I help them? Well, my university said, we don't have anything that can really help you with computer graphics. So I went to Penn State and I pitched to them well before there was an idea of having these interdisciplinary majors. Hey, I want to mix architecture, business architecture, building architecture, landscape architecture. I want to meet with the engineers and I want to understand how I can enable them. And I want to build this into a major. Could not get buy-in from comp sci to support me, but did get support from multiple labs at the university that they would support me. And so that was my undergraduate degree. And so I have a BA, not a BS. And it didn't hold me back. It did not hold me back. So
no BS.
Nope, no BS. Well, maybe, but not a degree. My master's is a master of science, but that I waited years to do that. I started out at AccuWeather. I was doing some private stuff on my own, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I got hired into AccuWeather, and I was in engineering, my husband was operations. And so from the very beginning, I knew what DevOps meant. Now, this was well before the term DevOps. This was back when the pager would ring and he's operations. He would be on the food chain. He would have to dial up by modem and he would start to try and figure out what was going on. 9 times out of 10, he'd turn around and say, hey, didn't you guys move something out into production on Friday night? Didn't you guys do XYZ? And I learned very quickly how imperative it was for he and I to work together. It started to be that they would call our house and just ask for whoever was there, whatever voice they got. And I learned how important it was that I had to design things that he could take care of, that he could take a look at logs that were appropriate. I also learned that I needed to be able to see what was going on in production. I needed to understand better how things were being managed there. And that was the start of the journey. I wound my way from AccuWeather. I did some private consulting after that for about 3 years with a number of different groups. I worked with Rite Aid, and I got picked up by KPMG. I was doing some work with a small epidemiology firm. And so all over the map, all kinds of different things. But I got picked up by KPMG before making my way to Deloitte.
Yeah. And then all the way to MITRE.
All the way to MITRE. MITRE is more recent. I jokingly say that I count my duration there in toddler months. I am still in my terrible twos. I behave like a 2-year-old because I'm here to make a difference. And sometimes you got to be a change agent, and not to be mean or eye pokey, but sometimes you got to bring a different opinion to the table. And for folks who don't know what MITRE is, there's this concept called an FFRDC, Federally Funded Research and Development. So after World War II, the government realized, holy moly, we don't have enough scientists. We don't have enough hardcore technologists. So we need to get them. And we can't always firsthand depend on industry. Doesn't mean that they're not doing good things. It means that sometimes people are going to sell something to you. How can we get unbiased, objective opinions? That's what I'm chartered to do. So I'm chartered to shoot straight. That's what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's why you're my best friend. So that's right. And we've done a lot. You've done a lot in the few years that I've seen you. So, all right. So that's your journey. Anything else that we're missing on your journey before we talk about?
Oh, good Lord. It's a couple decades long. So yeah, of course, there's a lot of stuff there. But, there's from working with, I've worked with tiny firms. I've worked completely independently. I've worked for global organizations and the funding and the investment that they have. So across the gamut, there's no perfect place. It's where you find yourself making a difference. Yeah.
And you make it sound like you're 75 years old, but you're 25. So I don't know how you've done all this.
Where's your tip jar, buddy? Where's that tip jar?
So anyway, let's talk about the real meat, because that's why you're here. Okay. Mm-hmm. So culture, obviously, I am not, and I think you told me you're not a people person, but you're more a people person than I am, because I'm at the bottom of the food chain right here. So why does culture matter so much to succeed in software innovation?
Well, even if we truncate that sentence, it's why does culture matter, right? That's really what we're talking about.
I guess in general. Yeah.
In general. So, and take it from an outside-in look. If we look at what's going on in our culture today around us in society, it's really crunchy, right? It's really crunchy, and we don't feel a sense of cohesion with other people. So let's say there's something happening over at in your small community with your little local zoning board. If you are fighting with each other, if you don't feel a sense of purpose together, you're not going to work together to change the zoning law or to make those improvements. Well, it's no different when you're talking about software. Fact of the matter is, I can't deliver to production the things that I design, the things that my teams design, if we're not cohesive and if we haven't built a culture together. Now, I'm not talking about culture change. I actually push back. You've heard me, Nick. I push back. We're going to do some culture change. No, we're going to build a new culture together. It's like saying, come into my house, sit down at my dinner table and say, we're going to change your culture. No, we're not going to change the culture. We're going to build a new one together. If you told me that, I would escort you out. I'd say, hit the door. But if you said, let's work together and build culture. Culture matters because it is the basis for people to buy in. It gives you a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. It is the thing that allows you to be authentic with one another. Culture, there are healthy cultures, there are toxic cultures. So I would actually maybe change our sentence to say, why does healthy culture matter? Well, it matters because toxicity is poison. And with poison comes being disenfranchised. It comes with doing a poor job. It comes with being sloppy. It comes with all of the other inherent risks when you just don't give a damn, right? You just don't give a damn. I'm not going to do my best. I am going to do my best if I feel like you and I are tied at the hip and we're elbow to elbow. We're fighting the fight together and we respect each other. That's why culture matters. We don't want to hear that because it's harder to calculate. It's harder to judge. It is harder to evaluate. It's harder to build together unless you're sincere. Again, all that touchy-feely stuff, right?
and I guess it matters for everything in life, but we argue that particularly for DevSecOps and software innovation, it's already hard enough. That culture is even more important. And I added healthy. See, I'm fast.
You
so
are.
I did it. It was always there. You just missed it.
Okay.
So what do you think in software, particularly what you've seen, with the factories and work at Kessaran and the rest of the Air Force, Space Force?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is enabling them to succeed?
I think there's a couple of different pieces of culture, and I'm working with some other software factories where it's crunchier. They are in the startup phase and they're trying to figure out who they want to be when they grow up. Having a vision that people buy into, and I don't mean blindly buy into, but that people believe in. Whoever said I can't spell culture without cult. There's truth to that. There's truth. But if your culture, if the environment around you is nurturing and supportive and enabling, then you are going to be more free in how you are spending your brain space. You're not going to be focused on the negativity of the interaction, the negativity of a mandate. You are, quite frankly, going to be able to better innovate. And with that, some of the most successful cultures that I have observed so far are those that allow there to be public failure. I don't mean massive multi-million dollar failures. I mean, they give the room to experiment and the output of the experiment is applauded, whether it did something amazing or whether it was like, that didn't work. We're going to have to learn. That's why it becomes so massively important. You've got to be able to allow people to think, and you have to even change some of the policy, right? How do you fail right now if your contract is based on some traditional measurements and you're legally not allowed to fail at that point? So your contracting doesn't always support that culture that you're trying to build.
Yeah, it's in fact probably one of the biggest impediments of innovation when you look at even organizations like DARPA. DARPA has stopped innovating mostly because of fear of failing. And compare that with Elon Musk and his 80% minimum ratio of failing to innovate. That's a pretty big kind of change of your brain cells, right?
Oh, sure. I was talking to Brian Fox. You probably know him. He does and we were chatting the other Friday. We were just kicking back, and he brought up a quote that I'm going to get wrong, but it was from Bezos. So Bezos, I think, was being picked on publicly. Something was being said about the fact that the Amazon had come up with the phone, and the phone was a failure. So somebody publicly was needling him. And he turned around and he said something to the effect that if you think that failure was good, you ought to see the other bigger failures we're working on right now. And so there's a mindset change that comes with it. Now, obviously, he didn't mean he was throwing money into the toilet for things that he knew were going to fail. Where he was going was that as they build up a culture of innovation, as they pull back on a lot of the toxicity and provide mechanisms to allow people to experiment, they're going to see more and more successes and more failures. It's just statistically what's going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. So now, what about people? And you know, we've seen how difficult it is to retain and attract talent.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we missing, and what are the key ingredients? Let's, you know, many smaller organizations are looking, and everybody's reaching out to me, you know, asking to post on LinkedIn to help them find some DevSecOps engineer, or some you know, some sales VP of sales or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
How do we help organizations, particularly smaller ones, and maybe even the bigger ones like DoD, right, to attract and retain talent? What are we missing?
Gosh, there's a lot of different things to unpack there. So
Yeah.
let's see. I'll start at the
Step at a
end.
time.
Stop looking for a unicorn. Don't try and hire unicorns. Hire ambitious people. Hire people who are learners, who want to learn and they're comfortable with continuous learning. I don't mean getting training once a month or once a year. I mean that they're keeping on top of things. So I think that's a piece of it. Be willing to invest in the people that you're bringing on board. And we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit more. I think we have some other questions that we wanted to play with on that.
Yeah.
But attracting talent does mean that you're going to have that culture. There's one place that I worked, I wish I had actually asked during the interview cycles, tell me more about your corporate culture. And I wish that I had really looked around the edges, around the curtain, to see what their culture was like. Because when I got inside the door, it was crunchy, and it was one of those things that can drive you away. So retaining talent does mean that you are invested in upskilling them, that you are redefining what those roles are. I mean, if you look at Nick, take a look at all the roles that we have in the government space and how rigid they are in how they're defined right now. If we want to attract and retain talent specifically on the government side, we're going to have to work on what those workforce definitions are, what the roles are. On the commercial side, on the industry side, on the non-direct government hire side, be willing to take people who are non-traditional, attract them with the mission. Nick, you and I have shared this story before, that the first time I ever worked with DoD, I walked onto a Navy base. I was actually escorted onto a Navy base. I did not yet have a CAC. I was brand new to this, and I went in to talk about software architecture and DevSecOps. And I was floored, humbled, and quite frankly, really hooked when the captain said to me, what you need to do is make sure that we get capabilities to the warfighter. And I had never heard the term warfighter in that way. I mean, at first I was like, wait a minute, is this like video game land? And I looked around and realized that these people were hellaciously passionate about making sure get the right stuff to the right people. And that's really what you have to start doing to attract talent. You do have to provide people autonomy to think, autonomy to invent. You need to also look at what are long-term teams? What are long-lived teams? Can you enable a long-lived team? Doesn't mean somebody's stuck forever around one table with 8 people, but you want people to be able to build a bond, right, with their others. Like I have a couple of folks who are, I call them work spouses. I'm very polygamous in the workplace. I got a couple spouses, and we get to know each other. And I know their good points. I also know the places where I need to complement with some of my skill sets. That is part of being in a workplace environment where you want to stay. That's part of retaining that talent, is allowing there to be for that long-lived team, that team connection. And then what happens when I start to move past that a little bit? What happens when I've been with this team for a while and I really am looking for a new opportunity? What help me inside the organization chart that path with me about what that next opportunity can look like? Right? That's a little bit different than what we're used to. Bring somebody in, put them in this spot, sit them in that seat. Right? That used to be, I think it's called Taylorism, right? When people are cogs and you just plug them in wherever they need to be. They can be swapped at whenever necessary. So, Cattle. People are
Yeah.
pets. People are
Yeah.
pets, not
People are
cattle.
pets. Although maybe we need a new name because pest is not that good
I know
English.
it does sound. There's
Right?
a whole weird sound to that. So we won't use that one again. I agree.
So Samuel here made a good point, right? Continuous learning, self-learning, right, is kind of the foundation now of learning with IT, and the pace of IT is just insane. At the same time, I find sometimes, unfortunately, because of the how difficult it is to find talent, that people are becoming a little bit demanding. I've seen people like leave, Fortune 500 and go from Microsoft to Google and ask twice the salary, and just like, just because they know it's tough to hire. It's not driven by their worth. It's just driven by the lack of talent, which is fine, right? But then I also see people that say, well, you should be investing in my learning, and but the same people are refusing sometimes to invest in themselves, right? And I was, probably the only one in DoD that was okay giving an hour a day to my people and contractors and civilian and military people to learn and first catch up and then learn, right? And continue learning. But even that, either people wouldn't do it, even if I was giving it to them, or they also had a tough time augmenting it with their own time to learn. So they were always expecting the company. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're creating brats, right? That are just so like,
Gosh,
used to getting whatever they want,
There's an entire debate to be had there. So I'm not going to talk about it in terms of generations because it's not a generational thing.
Right.
I'm seeing folks at every level, new to career, late in career, and they're just looking to make hay while the sun shines, get as much money as they can. You've got to tap into, and this is hard. It's not easy, but you've got to, during the interviewing process, start to tap into what makes that person tick. So I worked with Deloitte for almost 13 years, and they have a new role. People have had chief people officers for a while, but they have a chief purpose officer. And that's a different change. That's a different take on it. It's not just about making me feel good and rubbing my back and saying, get in there, here's a little raise, here's a little bit of training. It's about helping me identify what my purpose is, how I align what I want to do with what the corporation or the organization that I'm joining. That's the key, right? Aligning what I want to do with what somebody else needs to have done. And that's difficult. It is difficult. But I would, when I take a step back and I think about how do you weed through that when it comes to hiring has gotten really mechanical, very super mechanical. And I understand why, right? We do, there's one company I know that does all of their initial interviews is all done and there's no human in the loop. They've given you a number of questions. You get online, you look at the camera and it does an evaluation of you. And then it grades you and that goes on. Can't say I'm a big fan because the nuances of how we interact with each other. Sure, you can say that AI, that algorithm picked up on XYZ with my facial twitch, or it could just be that I'm nervous because I'm talking to a camera instead of talking to a human. So
that's terrible.
Yeah. Oh, it's
you can't even invest time, right, in someone. That's just
well. Wow. If I want you to come and be a part of my family, if we start to think about our organizations in a family type way, we want to have connections. It used to be, right? Generations ago, you had work and then separately you had home, and they were just a huge wall between them and you didn't let there be any bleed over. That's not how we live our lives now. We are so digitally connected to one another. I know that I'm texting. I know that I have Slack workspaces where I'm chatting with folks, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Oftentimes, Christina Rylander will hit me up on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. Yes, I'm calling her out on the carpet. But we're sharing about things that are more about our career than about soccer game that day or about gardening or about the bike ride that I took. So there's a mixing. So you've got to allow people to not have to divorce their personal from their work. Doesn't mean let it get in the way, but that's a part of the attraction. I want to know that I'm coming to a place where I have autonomy. I want to meet the people before I am hired. Nick, I was taken to, let's see, where this was down in Baltimore, and I was being interviewed by Citibank. And this is probably over a decade ago. Fantastic interviews, all the phone interviews. And they said, oh, come on down. So I went down, great face-to-face. And then they said, you know, we're going to have lunch with the team that you're going to be working with. And I got to tell you, it wasn't a good fit. I didn't care for them. They didn't care for me. All of the people who had been interviewing me up to that point, I was stoked. I was jazzed that this was going to be awesome, but it wasn't a good fit. The personalities just didn't click. Didn't take the job. I don't remember anymore if they even made an offer, but we parted ways. Those kinds of investment and having a conversation on the person who's going to be sitting beside you, even if it's virtually, that has to happen. That's different than what we've started to do. We've turned it into like this mass online database. How many ways can I get my resume out to how many different houses and so many different check marks? How can I get that going? And at the end of the day, it's coming back around to the people part. There's quite a lot of corporate groups right now that, I don't like the term headhunters, but they are going out and they're getting to know people. They're doing the front matter. They're having a conversation saying, you know, I got this guy named Nick. I think he'd like you, Trace. Let's get you connected with him. That's one of the things that we have to do to start to change this.
I got offered a very amazing job as a junior Python developer yesterday. So,
did you really? Are you going to do it?
Oh yeah. I mean,
okay.
that's my dream job. You know, I get a lot of these on LinkedIn. So, and you can tell the HR people are doing a lot of due diligence before spamming people all over the place. So, anyway, all right. So we talked about the lack of talent, right? So we're compounding the problem now because not only it's already difficult for DoD to pay the right numbers, but also, I mean, we have the mission, so I guess people get excited about the mission, right? And I had the same feeling that you did when people started talking about the warfighter, like they did to you. It's funny because that word had the same impact for me, so I completely understand or I guess connect to what you're trying to say here. But now we're compounding the issue of lack of talent. You know, there's allegedly, and they've been giving these numbers for years now, so I don't know if the numbers are even real or not. But there's 1.2 million people or jobs unfilled in cyber, allegedly, right? And then, you know, DevSecOps, I think it's going to be massive. I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be, it's not going to be a new job. It's going to be reskilling jobs. And so a lot of people will say, hey, companies are starting to invest, right, in, you know, spending and investing in training the existing employees, right? What do you do if employees don't want to learn? Because I found many of them, particularly in the department, that just, even if we were to give them the time, they just had no interest in learning. How do we solve that?
Oh gosh. So I picked up on a subtlety that you just said. You gave them the time to learn. So I'm going to guess that you said you can go take this class or you can go take this course. I subscribe to the 70-20-10 principle. It's nothing that I invented. It is, I think it came out from research maybe in the mid 90s. And the idea is that only 10% of your learning should be formal classroom learning. So don't keep sending folks out the door to get that unless you have the 20 and the 70. So the 20 is the social stuff. It's the brown bag lunch. It's what we're having right today. It's the DoD's DevSecOps hours that they have of training. It's the things that we're doing with the DevOps Institute to have these coffee chats and just have conversation. So there's that informal part. So that's 20%. 70% experience. It's on the job. So don't send me to get training and then come back and not have the role for me. How many times we see this all the time? It's almost like we throw a dog biscuit, you know, to a puppy. Like, why don't you go take that Kubernetes training? Hey, why don't you go take that, you know, algorithm building training? Why don't you go take Python? No, I need to be skilled in the things that are going to help me to do my job and to help me to stretch to where we need to go as I grow in my role within the organization. That's a little bit different. The experiential piece, that's on the job. So what is the stretch? Is it that I am going to shadow with another group within my organization? Maybe you send me over to operations. Yes, I know we always say DevSecOps, we're all together, but the truth of the matter is we've got folks who are more hardcore dedicated to operations. Maybe I go do a tour and truly understand what it's like to live in their world and understand the Kanban that they're going through, the continuous monitoring, and then bring that back to some of the things that I'm building. So there's, I want to say, here's the recipe, just do this. The answer is start giving a damn about people. And yes, this is a technical person who doesn't like humans. I went into tech for a reason, but start caring about the humans so that they can grow and we can get things done together. You're going to retain people if they are getting the skills that they need. Now, you ask a pretty interesting question is, what do you do if you got somebody who doesn't want to learn? Well, you need to find a role where they are safe and not learning. What could that be? I don't know. I'm not a big advocate of rolling people off. I give them the benefit of the benefit of a doubt, and to give them opportunity. Generally, if everybody who's around the same table with you is energized and starting to learn, that will start to rub off. I will often take away some of the crutches that are there, meaning a lot of people that say they are not really interested in learning, it's because they've learned to fall back on checklists. I can tell you about some massive checklists that we were using with the IRS during the Obamacare, during the ACA rollouts. And we're talking like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines. And you'd start on a Friday night and you would go throughout the weekend, but it was a checklist. And if it wasn't on the checklist, then I didn't have to do it. So there's a sense of, I only have to do specifically what I'm told, because culturally, I won't get in trouble if I do what's on the checklist. So, I'm tying it back to culture. I'm tying it back to culture. You want to retain people. You want to get people to be interested in what they're doing. You need to give them a culture that incentivizes them to learn, not incentivizes them to follow a checklist. So that gets rid of some of the blame skating that we've seen in the past. If you have a failure, then okay, we need to work together to figure out what happened so that we together can put in audits, we can put in automations, we can put in upskilling so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and Joel was mentioning that passion, right, drives them to learn more. And it was the same for me and for many others. But some people, let's face it, in the last 10, 20 years, started to pick IT because you just make good money, right? It's not so much a passion. I remember an interview where I had a developer, and I don't know how we got to talk about this, but he ended up telling me that he did not have a laptop at home. He didn't have a device at home at all. I was like, oh, what? What is this?
How is it that you are existing? Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, talk about, it's not just passion. It's like he couldn't care less about, IT. He wasn't that bad, but he, I mean, looking at the code, at least, I don't know if it was even East code, but clearly he was decent, but no passion, right? So of course I didn't hire him, but I guess we're back to the passion piece. There's the mission passion, right, with DoD. So that's pretty good. Most companies don't have that. I mean, maybe a SpaceX, right? Maybe Amazon, but whatever. But I mean, SpaceX is certainly more driven than Amazon. Most companies don't have that, right? DoD has it. And then you have the pay gaps, right? I would argue most people end up believing the department is not just for pay. Although I also find that they use other excuses, but the fact is, was maybe a little bit more about pay than they let people believe, because they just don't want to say it. So they're gonna say, well, I didn't feel like I was making a good impact, but they still took the cushier job with the most money, right? But that's fine, right?
Well, it might not be cushier. Let me push on that. Might not be cushier. We're in a change, right? An evolution when it comes to the government and software. Traditionally, the government has been the oversight. They have not been the deep technical chops that we need now, because we're going from contractor led, right? We used to do, like I jokingly say, F-35 is jet as a surface. right? We said, give us a jet and all of the things that go along with it. And they did. And Lockheed it's an amazing, and I work with that program, and it floors me how amazing the technologies are that are there. But on the government side, we don't have enough humans that are truly in the government roles. We got a fair amount of contractors. We've got lots of industry help that are happening here, but we don't have enough of the government folks. And imagine what that's like to have constant dumpster fires because there's not enough of you. For one of my sponsors right now, for one of the other services, not Air Force, it's exactly what's happening. I get time with this person maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks, if that, because just running helter-skelter because there's not enough government folks. So I think that there's at the mid to senior levels, I think we're also seeing a real departure because it's just too damn hard. It's just too hard, right? If it's Sisyphus, right? You're pushing the boulder up the mountain every day. How many years are you going to do that until you say, I'm going to push the same boulder but get twice the money? Okay, I'll go do that.
Yeah, it's exhausting also to repeat the same things again and again. At some point, I was like, I'm still fighting the same fights 3 years in, and so you've heard, of course, of Jason Weiss leaving, and of course you heard of me leaving, obviously.
Yep.
I made a little bit of noise. He didn't go out in the same noisy way, but with the same frustration, I guess. What do we do? What are we missing?
Wow, that's a big one, because when we're talking about talent at early career and mid-career, and then we talk about these additional layers and layers of policy and layers of challenges. Gosh, we're at an inflection point where the generations of the leaders are changing now. I think that is going to help us. Not everybody is 40 years of distinguished service, XYZ. Not everybody is coming at it from a waterfall background. Not everybody is coming at it knowing what the defense industrial complex has been in the past. There are people, and so we're at that precipice. We're at that point of that inflection point of change. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be just dramatic amounts of effort that have to go into it. How do we motivate software factories to work together? How do we motivate the Hill to not make mandates that are, maybe they're unfunded, maybe they're funded, but with such a tight timeline that it forces us to make too many tech debt decisions? I mean, there are lots and lots of pieces to it. I would still go back to, how do we get the acquisition to line up? If we've got acquisition smarts that line up to what the contracting aspects need to be, we're going to be better off. We've got to incentivize the change as well, right? Apparently, delivering capabilities to the end users is not incentive enough.
Yeah. And I guess, we're losing a lot of the government side that are more technical. Jason was very good. He was really one of the few government people I met on the senior side, right, that understood tech. I can't think of many others. It's a big loss, right? He lasted a year.
But he's still on the other side. But you haven't gone anywhere. You've gone away, but you haven't gone away. So I appreciate, Nick, that one thing that you've done is you didn't step back from this challenge. You're coming at it from a different point of view. Maybe this will be more successful if you are tub thumping, table pounding on the topics that need to get out in front of people. And Jason's approach may be a bit different. I know he's still available for conversations. I know that he still cares about what happens. Oh, yeah. So yeah, he's a good egg.
People in the government, though, right? I mean, we're losing a lot of the momentum and top cover for some of the teams, right? The fact that they have not replaced me, what is it now, 7 months after I left, that's concerning. I mean, and they're not trying. I know they're not trying to replace me. So clearly, Mr. Hunter during the his confirmation hearing said, "Oh, software is so important and it's going to be a top priority and blah blah blah." But again, talk, right? Where are the walk? And I don't know. I'm just concerned that I see a lot of great people leaving. And look, I agree they're not disappearing, but we can still make an impact. I agree, and I think I was at a point where for me it was better to be outside, but not everybody can be outside, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's my fear. Like, where is the replacement? where are they? So anyway.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick. Who were you grooming as your number 2 while you were busy fighting the good fight? This is something that I'm seeing happen a lot. It happens to me in some of my programs where I am so hell-bent. There's a battle to fight. I've got to make this difference, that I don't always turn around and bring my next along with me. I'll use the term lieutenant. Who is that person that I'm training up who can truly step in when I go on? They might have to stretch, but they're like-minded. They are passionate about the same areas. They have gained value from exposure to the things that I've been working on. So, Nick, was there? I'm going to call you out in the carpet because I'm that way.
Yep.
Who was Nick Jr. when you were? Who did you, or did you not have the ability to do that? Were you hamstrung?
No, I had probably 4 or 5, I guess, Nick Juniors, and I guess. My first issue was, if I left because of frustration, I didn't want to put them in those roles to be frustrated. They had decent roles in the department, and I felt like that wasn't just not a good fit unless the department was willing to fix all the stuff I was complaining about. If they were willing to fix the stuff I was complaining about, then I would have stayed anyway. So that was point 1. Then I proposed a name to replace me, a great person that and they came up with every reason on the planet that they couldn't move him because he was a GS-15 and this is an HQE billet and whatnot. It's been done before, I know for a fact, but they decided to say, oh, we can't do that, legally speaking, which is not true. So then they said they would, hire someone to hunt for a CSO, and I guess the hunt must not be going very well. So, but the 5 people I was grooming, 2 left.
Okay.
Since then, and 3 are still in, and would take the role if the role was empowered and not just some gimmick title, so they have they're doing very important work, and so you would be disrupting very large DoD, Air Force, Space Force programs, but for what? So I was always very careful because you have these teams in GBSD or B-21 or F-35, or right, you can mess those programs up, and just to create a CSO that just not capable of succeeding. So it was more important for me to preserve the program office.
Well, so I'm gonna poke at that a bit more. One of the things you said is that you wanted to protect them, and I do this with teams. I very much buffer them. There was a very toxic client sponsor environment, and I wouldn't let my people go into these meetings unless they were behind me. I mean, literally, that I would be the face and the voice, and they would message me because I didn't want them getting hit with these arrows and slings. We had a conversation though and said, okay, who actually wants to be exposed to this? You see what I'm challenged with. Do you want more exposure to this? So at times, especially for those who I'm really grooming, I will leave it up to them if they want that exposure. That's harder to do because they might get upset. Yes, they might leave. And yes, that was also their decision to follow along in footsteps behind you. It's a tough one to do. I appreciate the fact that there are still 3 people that you were grooming that are there, that are following in your footsteps, that are still making a difference. That's an amazing testimony.
The bad news is they're all pretty much talking about leaving.
Okay, but who are they grooming? Go call them up after this. Text them and say, who are you grooming?
We need to. Yeah, they each have at least one. And look, I proposed it to them. Right, I didn't make the decision before I asked, hey, with these conditions, would that even make sense for you to move and do all these things and put what you have at risk, and so they all kind of said, well, unless things improve, there's just no point. if you couldn't do it, why could we do it? You know, and I had the luxury of not caring if they fired me and just go, you know, be loud. And most of these guys are government employees and they didn't make enough money to do that. So they were like, well, you know, if the right, you know, if Dr. Roper was there to push and, you know, do all the good things, then no problem, right? But
I
when
took
you
your
have no
quote,
one
Nick.
really excited, it's tough, right?
I just jotted down what you said to add to my goofy wall of quotes, and so you had the luxury of not caring. Yeah, that's it's going on the wall, dude. It's going on the wall.
Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, it's easy for me to, you know, I learned so much, you know, when I started, and I'm not gonna lie, I've seen it a lot from, you know, people coming in like, you know, DDS and all these people like me coming from the outside and judging. I I remember a friend of mine, a major, say, you know, I had DDS come and just tell me pretty much I was an idiot and that they could solve everything we're doing in 2 days and we should just listen to them. And then I am, you know, I kind of acted the same. You know, I remember the first meeting I got to in the Pentagon was a meeting on this, you know, the swap study on Agile to create this massive report that ended up not even being, you know, used that much. But the room was massive, which was always for me shocking how many people were sitting in that room. But then, you know, the whole thing was about Agile and getting, you know, feedback. And I remember listening for like 10, 15 minutes, literally my first meeting in the Pentagon. And after 15 minutes, I could tell they had no clue what Agile was, right? No understanding of what Agile is. And they are the people picked by the department to come up with a solution on adopting Agile in the department. So I raised my hand and I say, hey, you know, who here has even used Agile in an actual project before? And only 2 people out of 75 raised their hands. That's the day everybody hated me, by the way. That was the done deal. All of these people in that room felt I was an ass, which was pretty true. Maybe.
Well, but you're bringing up a really awesome point, and that is, you know, we've been talking about training and retention in a different way. We have not been talking about the gap in leadership training that has to happen. Years ago, I was working with Kavitha Pravakar. She still is with Deloitte Consulting. She's leading a very huge program. I think about 900 of us in this program. And she started something called Tech Savvy. And the purpose was that there are lots of folks who didn't understand the words, were in rooms where they needed to understand the words. And I bring that out because I think that we are lacking the words, the understanding, the definition. The people who are making the decisions, the people who are the policymakers, the people who should be your luminaries should not be saying, oh yeah, we need to do some DevOps. We need to do DevOps. We need to be agile and let's adopt safe, because they've learned those words, hearing them. What the hell does that actually mean? I'm going to do DevOps. Stop. Let's get them that executive level training, and let's actually help them understand the difference of what they will see at their level. Why does it matter to them? What's going to be for that frozen middle that gets so hounded and pounded? What's it mean there? And then what's it mean more practically, tactically for product teams, for delivery teams? There's education that has to happen. I would say we need to take it the whole way to the hill. And those staffers, with some of the things that they say, God love them, they might mean well, but they're throwing words out that they don't understand, and they're writing those things into recommendations, into reports. Yeah, we've got a lot of upward education to do as well.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? I always said the only reason why we have to wait for staffers to tell us what to do is because we're not capable of proactively doing it. And usually we have 5 years before they wake up to say, hey, you should do this. So really, it's because we're fighting at our jobs that staffers have to even, you know, stop putting that kind of language in the NDAA. I've seen it with the SWAT. I've seen it with pretty much everything around DevSecOps. They do it wrong. But the fact is, if we did it, they wouldn't have to do that. And we're pretty much waiting for them to tell us what to do.
No, but we don't have to go to the hill yet. Why don't we look within our different organizations? Let's look within our massive programs and let's educate the full stack, right? Jonathan Smart talks about making a thin vertical slice, right? The whole way from the boiler room to the boardroom kind of mentality. I think about the education that has to happen. It is different types of skills, different types of learning that have to happen. It may be more practical, tactical. It might be hands-on. It might be culture. At the upper levels in leadership, it's understanding how it's going to impact the people below you, beneath you, that you are facilitating them delivering value. I still go back to how many leaders don't know what agile actually is. And I don't mean don't put them through another course. The government has paid for so many courses in agility. Everybody's been through 3 or 4. I don't know any program I've been with that the government folks didn't say, oh yeah, I've had about 5 different trainings. Give them an opportunity to model the behavior and bring the leadership in so that they're starting to model that behavior as well. You got to give them the words though. I don't think that some of the most senior folks have had that exposure yet.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so let's go to the next topic, which is this fancy meme.
Mm-hmm.
So the CFO asks the CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? And then the CEO says, what happens if we don't and they stay? So we talk about learning and training. What are some of the mechanisms you recommend organizations to help their people learn? I pushed that hour a day, and we were giving access to that learning hub from O'Reilly, with the Linux Foundation and all that created content and the dual DNA stuff that you guys and ANS put together with Christina and the team. What else is there for people to invest in learning, I guess?
Well, I'm starting to pound the table a hell of a lot about turning our people into hobbyists. They're learning hobbyists. That's what we're doing. We're saying you need to, in your own time, can you go and get smart? Here's some free resources and you can go and get smart. But what about the guy who has 3 wonderful children and he's about to have his 4th and his spare time is spent focused on his family? Does that mean that he shouldn't have that time on the job? Does that mean that it shouldn't be baked in? So we need to first start to bake in the experience. We need to bake in, I said earlier about that 70, 20, 10. Give everybody a 10% and make it pithy, make it specific, and then immediately get them into a role where they're using that. If they don't start to use it on the job, it is going to make a difference. Don't keep sending people for certifications if they're not going to use them. Now, I'm the first person to say there's something I really like about certifications, and that is for the practitioner type certifications. The practitioners, these are like the entry level, the white belts, I think is what Gary Groover calls them. It gives you the same lexicon. It means we all are using the same words in the same way. I'm a big believer in that. Totally agree with that as a starting place. But then you need to move on to, I'm going to stick with Groover's approach to this. Green belts and black belts. Green belt means come and demonstrate what you just learned. Whatever you just learned, come and demonstrate it on the job. Demonstrate it, and I'll help you. And if you fail, I'll help you. And if you succeed, I'll help you. Right. So let's let people start to succeed. And then a black belt is somebody who's able to help others in the organization. So once I've gotten my hands dirty, I tried it out. Let's go ahead and let me start to mentor and train others. Not everybody is great with that, but yeah, it's some are, some aren't. I noticed a comment that somebody mentioned that children as a discriminator. Don't get me wrong. I believe that there are lots and lots of blended things that we do. For me, I am the medical power of attorney for my dad. My mom died suddenly. My dad, turns out he had medical problems that we didn't know about. So sometimes you'll see me go dark and I can't spend that extra time that I would want to because I'm making choices. So give me the opportunity to learn during the day. I'm not always going to spend every waking hour outside of work so that I can bring it back to work to somehow be rewarded, We're doing that. We're making people hobbyists, especially with security right now. I'm going to shift that security left. We're just going to shift it left. We're not actively engaged in training folks about that. A lot of good things that we can do in the workplace, like gamification. There's a cool gaming engine, the DevOps Coder Academy, the Cyber Academy. Both of them have, you join up and it's fun and it's relevant and it's pithy. But do that, let people do that during the workday. Give them that time to do that. Because if you don't do that, all that push towards, oh, we got to deliver into production, you're going to get crap. Or worse, you're not going to get what you asked for at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think investing in people and government people complain that we pay contractors and that we have to invest in their learning, but that's a little short-sighted too, right? Because if you get people and you don't want them to rotate and you want to keep those people, you don't invest in them, then they're going to get stolen behind, and then you're paying for lesser quality of a person. They also expect people to be already at the top of the game, but it's never that easy. So even doing it for contractor, I thought that was always important. What do you think?
Absolutely. I don't think it matters who is on your team. You need to be growing and moving together. You may have set a minimum requirement for somebody coming in the door as a contractor, bring me XYZ talent, but your groups, your people that are delivering your capabilities, they need to be gelling and they need to be learning together. So no, you may not be able to contractually provide them with that classroom learning. You sure as heck can provide them with on-the-job opportunities to stretch. That doesn't go against a contract.
And what I really liked also with the tools is the when you have a learning experience tied to a hands-on exercise of putting, having access to a cloud sandbox to put it to practice. It's, I get your point on getting hands-on thing and maybe, shadowing someone, but that's not always easy to do, particularly when we're virtual with COVID and stuff. The lab stuff is great, but it's never as good as real stuff. But at the same time, you can also just take someone that's never done anything before and just say, oh, good luck, we're going to put you in charge of this project. So there's a kind of a need of a middle ground somewhere. And I find it to be very difficult when it's virtual. I think when you can do pair programming or you have people in the same room, I think that's much easier. But virtually, it's pretty difficult.
I think it's more natural for us to be co-located. But I've had virtual teams since 2007. And at one point, when I was with Deloitte Consulting, I took a gig and it was global. I was the only person in the US. And so, no, I learned how to engage and how we could have virtual working sessions. We would sometimes call them hackathons, literally 4 hours where we overlapped, where we were working together, cameras on, but we weren't necessarily talking the whole time, but cameras on. We're working on what we're doing, share a desktop screen, ask a question, but we were working together. So there are techniques that you can use to tear that down. It doesn't have to be as hard as we're making it to be virtual. So that's my take on it. I think we've made it harder than it is.
Yeah, no, that's probably true. All right, next topic. What about degrees? You know my take on it, but I'm biased, so let's hear yours.
What about degrees? So I just recently got my software engineering degree. I had a couple decades without it and was one of the first chief architects of a program that Deloitte had in place. Only 40 of us total globally. And I got to tell you, I got there without a software engineering degree. So do I think that degrees are mandatory? I think we need people with degrees. I don't think that everybody needs them. I'm the daughter of an educator. My father was a school superintendent, and he retired and bought an architecture firm. I talked about that earlier, so he could build schools. Seemed like a pretty cool thing to do. But I tell you that because I'm a firm believer in providing educational opportunities. But not everybody needs to be a researcher. Not everybody needs to have that theoretical background. Some degrees right now, I don't want to be too negative, many of them don't have the practicality to be able to operationalize it right away. So you come out of school with an undergrad degree or a master's degree, and you still have to get retrained. So I think we need to have a better balance. You saw that Google dropped some of their degree requirements lately. I think we need to drop some of the degree requirements. I also think there are places where we need those. We need to have people who understand, who are deep researchers. We need to have people who understand the algorithmic sciences and understand the math that that underlies all of this, the underpinnings. We need that, but not everybody. There's a term, Rosalind Radcliffe taught me this term a couple of months ago. A number of us get together every couple of evenings and we'll just chat for a bit. We're talking about this in specific. She said at IBM, they use the term new collar, NEW, not blue, not white, but new collar worker. And that just floored me. And the whole idea is let's identify non-traditional career paths. Let's focus on training people into the roles that we need them to fill. What I need as an entry-level, truly entry-level developer is not what I need for a systems engineer. It's not what I need for a lead architect. I need different skill sets, and that's 1,000% okay. So let's train them. Let's bring them out of school. Let's have internship programs. Some of our services have really phenomenal internship programs happening with the software depots and with some of the factories. It's actually quite impressive. We need to double down on understanding where the degrees are necessary and where they're not necessary. Now, I'm sure that people are going to throw tomatoes at me for this one, but as somebody who I wanted to go the whole way and get my PhD. I don't think I'm going to bother with it. I don't think the juice for me is worth the squeeze time-wise, although I would desperately love it. Wouldn't it be cool to be Dr. Bannon? Just be Dr. Bannon. But, one of the reasons that I got my master's degree was I was in the role that I'm in with MITRE. We're research. We are federally funded research and development. So I need to be able to have all of the theory. I need to understand it. I need to be able to take it and apply it hands-on. So for me, it was very relevant, and it filled the dream that I had. I got married really young. I got married in college to my high school sweetheart. So I just never invested in going back for my master's degree. So me getting my master's was a bit about fulfilling the role that I need within MITRE. It is valuable and necessary. It was also fulfilling for me. But there are a whole lot of people who don't need those. There are a whole lot of people who are incredible, and we need to double down on bringing them in and having those experiential learning, understanding where their skills are, and training them into the roles that they need to fill. So, rant over.
Oh, that's great. And I guess I want to have a chance to come and work for MITRE. I'm very upset about it.
Oh, now, Nick. No, Nick, your journey is a little bit different too. I mean, look about how many corporations that you started, the mergers and acquisitions stuff that you've done. Did you have your PhD? Do you have your master's?
Nope.
Right. And it didn't stop you. I guess my point is there are times where it's appropriate. There are times where it's not. Let's not be biased about it in such in a negative way. Yeah, I think that's keeping us from also, your other question earlier was about retention and hiring. Sometimes the degrees are getting in our way.
Yeah.
We don't need, everything does not have to be based on a degree. Quite frankly, some of the best talent that I've ever experienced had a degree in something that was something else. A good friend of mine, if he's listening to this, his name is Martin Sheridan. Met him at AccuWeather many, many years ago. Fantastic enterprise architect. And I don't mean that stodgy, not connected with people kind of boxes and line enterprise architect. I mean, he saw the big vision. He understood it. When we were doing GOES satellite ingestion systems, when we were doing this stuff, he's whiteboarding, he's teaching us all this. I believe his degree was in urban planning. I can't remember. It was either urban planning or maybe it was geology, but it was his ability to see how systems of systems and things connected together. Let's look for vision. Let's look for inspiration. Let's look for people who want to learn.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And, particularly with the lack of talent, I think it's, and some of the best talents I've met were self-taught. And when I look at the curriculum of universities, I'm not going to lie, it's pretty concerning how far behind they are. And you're learning, and you're not learning the most important, which is to learn. I find that there's not enough focus on teaching people how to self-learn. That's probably the most important skill you need in IT, and that's probably why I was able to learn different things and move fast, and always like to learn. If you don't need to have 50 people holding your hand to go and learn something, that's pretty important. It's probably the most important skill in my life, at least.
Well, it's probably one of the most important things that you're instilling in your kids. And I will say that if you talk to mine are getting a little older, they will say the same thing. I have a boy and a girl, and they will say one of the most important things was you cut the cable, you turned off the TV, you provided us with art supplies, you provided us with the opportunity to walk over to the library, to rent we would stream some kinds of videos, but got them just so turned on by experiencing things and investigating things and sending them outside. I suppose now somebody would take my kids away and call me a free range parent, but I was the first person to say, outside, go get busy, go find something to do. That indoctrinates a love of learning. So I think you're spot on. If you can have a love of learning, a lifelong love of learning, if you're continually curious, that's going to make a difference. So we've got another generation to help us. I think we've got a good generation that's coming in that's really, really curious. We need to figure out how we can pluck those people out when we're going through the interview process. It's hard to create a sense of curiousness mid to late career if they're not already. So how do we find those people and how do we encourage them? That's a difficult one.
Yeah, that's very good. And you mentioned Google that's removing a degree requirement, but dozens of companies are actually creating their own kind of degree-like kind of things to help people get where they want to be. Because even Google hiring some of the best talent coming out of universities, they found out that they had to spend at least six months to a year to teach them the stuff they actually needed. So that's probably not good enough when you're spending quite a little bit of a fortune on education.
Well, different corporations are now investing. They are talking to your colleges, community colleges. They are talking to the high schools. People are a little more nervous about corporations coming into the public school system, and I understand that. That's fine. But they are looking at how do we help, right? The STEM programs, and I'll say the STEAM programs. I'm actually an advocate of STEAM, not just STEM. Got to teach people how to think innovatively, and art will help you with that. But going ahead and creating those programs is a very strong thing. A lot of the major corporations now, when you come in the door, even as a more senior person, it's 6 weeks of indoctrination and learning and getting what you need to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Next topic.
You betcha.
So this one is always a little sensitive for me because I don't like to, I don't like talking about race and gender. I think everybody is the same, and the least we think about it and talk about it, the better. But with you, I could not at least bring it up because I don't talk to, unfortunately, as many women as I like to in the department. And I think it's an important story to share because I think talking to a lot of women, they feel like they have no shot at working in the DoD and they just give up and don't even try. So I guess maybe you can tell us your journey working now here as a woman.
So I'm gonna take you on a little bit of a journey and go back. I never thought anything about being a woman in technology in the earlier parts of my career. I don't know why. Just didn't dawn on me because I was busy having fun. I was busy learning things. And as I started to grow in my career, I realized that I was oftentimes the only woman in the room. And I would look around. I think, oh, okay, well, it's because I'm good at what I do. And I didn't think about it as somebody might have been excluding others. I got to tell you that I was the old-fashioned term. Please, nobody hit the hate button for this one. The old-fashioned term used to be a tomboy. So my brother and I are 2.5 years apart, and anywhere he would go, I would go too. We are exceptionally close friends. So I just wanted to be, I wanted to be a Boy Scout. I didn't want to be a Girl Scout. I didn't want to make, arts and crafts. I wanted to be out climbing mountains. So there was more adventure to me at that point in time as I was growing up. So take that forward into my career. Being the only woman in the room at first wasn't a consideration to me until I started to build that succession plan I told you about earlier, until I started to look around me and realize there's no women here. Why are there no women around me? And it dawned on me that some of it had to do with education, some of it had to do with hiring, and it was a little bit disconcerting to me. But I've really become an advocate for, well, not just women, for technologists. You'll see me use the term real technologists, because while I don't know that I have been, well, I can tell you one story in particular, two stories in particular. In general, I don't feel that there has been a lot of bias against me because I'm a woman. Don't think that. I think that I had to bring my credibility to bear every step of the way. I think that it forced me to always be at the top of the heap. If I was going to elbow my way to be at the table, I was going to have to be excellent. Now, I thought that I had to be excellent no matter what, so I would have elbowed my way to the table from that perspective. But as I go along, I still don't like to talk about being a woman architect. I'm an architect. I happen to gender identify as a woman. That's me. I don't know that everybody feels that open yet. The reason that I've agreed to talk about being a woman in technology, the reason I'm working with, there's another woman I work with named Charlene O'Hannon, and we're working doing a podcast series that's called Tech Strong Women. And the whole idea is, let's identify, I think Gerald said this earlier, identify the badass and call out that excellence. I would say that the bigger bias that I've experienced is actually educational. It's you didn't do this before, or your degree doesn't say this, or you don't have that certification. I have personally experienced more bias from that than I have ever had from being a woman. Now, again, I might be a little blind because my personality is just hell-bent. So,
but you told me also your hair got pinker the more you DoD. So
it does. There, right? It does. So I've my hair, this is white, it grows out. That's the color that my hair is. It's a crazy blonde. And I've had pink in it since about 2015. But as I've been working with the DoD, it dawned on me that, first of all, life is short, express yourself, be authentic. But in addition to that, my credibility is not based on the color of my hair. If it is, I don't want to work with you anyway. So I allowed myself to make it a little bit pinker during the pandemic. And the number of times that I've been in meetings where at the end of it or on the side, somebody's tapped me and said, oh, you know what? My wife mentioned to me, or my daughter mentioned to me, or I would like to do that. I'm glad you did that. Thanks for being yourself. So a part of me is just hell-bent to be authentic. And that, it's kind of fun to be a little bit pinker and a little bit pinker and a little bit pinker. So we'll see what happens next.
Are you doing it also maybe to push people's button a little bit so they wake up a little bit?
Maybe. Yeah, do you think I'm edgy that way?
Yeah, I think so.
I think a little bit. Yeah. Again, let's have a conversation about tech. And if you want to argue about the color of my hair or the earrings that I have or the color of my shirt or, how many folks, Chris Hughes and I had this discussion recently about people with their sleeves, all kinds of tats. Your tattoos they don't make you unprofessional. It makes you differently adorned. Okay. Yeah. Now, I understand that we also have to be able to walk into different corporate settings, walk into different areas. I'm not going to wear, or should I say I'm going to dress to the occasion and I'm going to understand that, but nah, sorry.
Yeah, I can tell you on the dress thing, first being young and stuff, I always overdressed most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I was a little disappointed when I've seen a lot of DDS particularly, I think people show up in very senior level Pentagon meetings in shorts, and I even at the retirement, I think it was the retirement of the vice chairman of the Joint Staff, where the former DDS director shows up in like hoodie and stuff, and I'm like, really? Like, you're 50 plus years old.
There's a balance, and 50 doesn't mean you can't wear a hoodie, but you're spot on.
He was playing to become like to look like a young kid, like hip,
well, don't be a poser. My kids would say, "Don't be a poser, Mom."
Yeah, exactly.
So don't be a poser. Be authentic to yourself, but also understand the situation that you're going into, because they demand different kinds of respect. I would not show up for a wedding unless they told me it was highly informal and they wanted me there in shorts. Wouldn't show up in shorts. So it's the same thing in the workplace.
I know that we're looking. Ceremony, right?
Say it again, Nick.
Why would someone do it in a retirement ceremony, right? It's like a wedding. It's the same thing, right? It's
exactly. And
it's honestly, it's creating, we're already fighting the bureaucracy. You're just adding more bullets, in my opinion. And you're adding more targets when honestly it's already hard enough. Why would you do this to yourself? It's just, I never understood this.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, good heavens, we have so much else to do. Does the color of my hair really matter? Does it really matter? Now there's value in some of what Kessel Run did, some of what the Navy Forge is doing. So they're coming in and they are wearing hoodies, or they're wearing Hawaiian shirts, and even the senior folks are that way. And you can tell they feel a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. But there's a different reason that they're doing that. They're doing that to level the playing field, because it's not command and control in that hierarchy, right? They're looking at making people feel comfortable in engaging with each other. So it's almost like it's kind of an interesting analogy. My kids never went to a school where they had to wear school uniforms, but I really understand the mentality of leveling the playing field by all children dressing alike. Yeah. Because then that's you just take it off the table. Well, by letting anybody wear whatever they want, you're taking it off the table. You're taking the hierarchies off the table a bit. But your story about a retirement dinner or retirement ceremony and somebody in a hoodie, that was just poor taste.
Yeah. And it's just for me it's I don't know if it's ego, but it's just adds a layer of conflict that we just don't need. It's just and to top it all, when the same person tells us the biggest success of DDS was Jedi, that was okay. That was
well, do they mean justice, equality, diverse? Well, it depends. Did they mean Jedi as in justice, equality, diversity, inclusion?
No, the cloud.
Okay. All right. Well, I was trying to give an out there. I know.
No. So, and he meant it. It was a success story. That was interesting. He said he made the cloud acceptable in the department. I'm like, okay, but you also kind of ruined it for all of us. So
we got a long way to go until we get until I don't want to take us too far down the tech rant, but that's my tech rant for today has been about making cloud available and commercial versus gov, and what's the impact to our NATO partners. There's a whole lot of cloud for us to accomplish, and we got some big challenges there.
We're running out of time, not just here on the show, but in general. China is not waiting for us. So you have met with most of the DoD software teams, maybe too many or not enough, depending on the time of the
I
day.
think you'd have to ask them.
Yeah. Well, Well, I know they loved you, so that's that. But what is working well and what is not working well?
The initial startup mode is working well. And because it is a startup mode, I jokingly say it's like being under a bushel basket. They go over here, they hide off. People are making Herculean efforts. They're being bold. They're making decisions. They're sleeping under the desk. They're surging in whatever way they need to do. And they get that first success. And then they don't know what to do. Then they can't move forward, because that first success is really revolutionary. They've started to work together aligning business agility and technical agility. They're focused on overall flow. They're bringing real mission value, but they're doing it in this one place. They try to sustain that, and there's a lot of crunchiness in trying to sustain just that first success. I'm not talking about scaling it. Just put scaling off on a shelf for now. So they get that first success that was Herculean. They didn't think about operationalizing for the long run. They didn't think about the nuances of being able to sustain that first success, keeping the people around. So then they can't scale. So that's one of the things that I'm seeing across the board, is that there's good successes, good first successes, but going from a term that I didn't make up, going from revolution to evolution. Another Jonathan Smart and Rick James brings this up as well. It's difficult to do that without being very intentional. Some other things that are difficult. We need more understanding of digital platforms. We don't understand what DevSecOps platforms are, let alone digital platforms. I'm not talking about digital engineering, just digital engineering, not talking just about the digital trinity. When we're building software now, we're building products, not projects, right? So a project has a beginning and an end. I used to say you code, load, hit the road. We don't do that anymore because we're building software with different architectures that they're long-lived, right? They're intentionally decoupled. But we're also very smartly abstracting things down into a digital platform. Some of that could be provided by a DevSecOps digital platform. Others are going to have extended business capabilities that are abstracted down into that platform. We're not sure broadly how to do that. What's the product team versus what's the platform team? How much should be in the platform? And there's a war going on there. Let's see, there's a lot for this. There are so many good-hearted people doing so many smart things that I want to make sure that first and foremost that I say that whether they've been DoD Software Factories or some that are on the public sector civilian side, all these folks are intentionally trying to bring value quickly. These things are not spinning up because somebody wants a fiefdom. They are spinning up because they want to do good, smart things. Acquisition on the DoD side, it's catching up. You know, we do have the adaptive acquisition framework, but not everybody has been trained in it. Not everybody has been able to put that into play yet. Even if you do have that in play, how are you paying for your platform team different than your product team if your contracting talks about projects? So I think that's a really difficult part of it. Some of the software factories are, what's a word that I could use for this? They're kind of using a tin cup, looking for funds, trying to figure out how they're going to get the next billet or the next funding drop from people. I think I have some concerns, personal concerns. This is Bannon only. This is not on behalf of MITRE. Bannon only has some concerns with some of our approaches to bringing an ecosystem together. We keep talking about wanting to have an ecosystem of software factories. If we want to do that, we need to give them a certain amount of autonomy, figure out what each one of them is good for. Every factory, if we're going to use the factory analogy here, every factory in the United States doesn't do the same thing, doesn't spit out the same thing, doesn't have the same needs by any stretch of the imagination. The talent that's working in those factories is very different. Our software factory ecosystem is very different, and that's okay. So we need to figure out how to embrace those things that are different, but also to build up where there are things that are different. Allow there to be specialization, I think is another big part of it. Some of the culture is working really well. Some of it, not so much. It depends on the specific software factory. There's no recipe. I would say that the hardest thing, and again, this is Tracy Bannon, this is not MITRE saying this, I think one of the best and worst things that ever happened was Kessel Run. And the reason I say that is that regardless as to their successes or failures, there are folks that come to me and say, you've worked with Kessel Run. Can you help me be like them? We just want to do what they did. No, what you need to do is define what your mission value is, or your business value is. And then we need to figure out how to get you there. And we might learn some good stuff from this, but nah, please no recipes. Please no copycat.
Yeah, there is a lot of lessons learned from all the factories. Obviously, Kessel Run being the first one and the largest investment and team. Lots of lessons learned there. I think the biggest one for me was the back to the cult comment of someone on the culture discussion. We need to be very careful when it comes to staffing those teams to make sure there's not a single company providing talent. Particularly when it comes to a DevSecOps product, we find them to be often a mini cult. I'm going to call it a mini cult when it comes to their training and the way they think and the way they dismiss other products and things. And it's not just this one company. They're all pretty much the same, fighting each other. It's also happening on the cloud provider side, but I think it's even worse on the Kubernetes distro side. And so you need to have diversity of talent. And I think that's one thing that we did well with Platform One was to make sure we have multiple companies on contract and diversity of options and diversity of learning and feedback and opinions.
It's a tough road to hoe though, Nick, because so understanding that businesses are businesses to make money, that's what they're doing. And so expanded sales, whether that's services or whether that's product, that's part of what they're trying to do, right? Land and expand. So understanding that imperative, I cannot fault people for focusing on that. Cannot fault them. I think the imperative falls on the side of the government.
Oh yeah, I blame the government, though, to be clear.
But that's even difficult as well, because if they find some place where they have success, or they find a vendor where they have success, you build up a natural bias towards them, and your muscle memory goes with it. I mean, there are a lot of fantastic consultancies. Some of them are large, some are tiny new ideas. I think the diversity piece of this, cognitive diversity or thought diversity, massively important to our success. And you're not going to get that from going with a single consultancy or a small contracting shop, a single contracting shop. It's got to get bigger, dude. We have to be hyper focused on diversity.
Yeah. And diversity of everything. But what you also see, I guess on the government side is, we can define what success means, right? But the fact is, having a 2 year or 3 year of tech debt to move off of a product when you're a 2-year-old or 3-year-old organization, because we're so locked into a single way of doing business, that's probably not a great agile discovery discussion. So that abstraction and that diversity is so important to me.
Well, the technical piece of it, the human diversity is one aspect of it. Technical diversity is a careful balance. So I'm going to put on my architect hat. And so you're going to get a rant for a second here. There are architectural trade-offs. There are times where we should take on technical debt to achieve something faster because there is a jumpstart that's available. If we deem that it is cyber secure and it's going to meet the need, hot diggity, go with it. But understand, what's the cost of change? As long as you are very specific, I don't just mean the dollar sign.
It has to be a conscious decision.
Exactly. Defensible decision-making. So as long as we do that.
But that wasn't a conscious decision.
Yeah. Well, it might not be, but that's my rant that I also don't want to say.
Telling me that they needed 2 weeks to move off of Pivotal. And that story, when the new leaders came in, turned into 3 years. Dr. Orper was not too happy.
Yeah, I think it's depending on what the trade-offs were up front. I wasn't there when the original trade-offs were made. I had the luxury of very early on.
But at least right? That's the key, right? I think the key is not to not be aware. That's it. Then you have pros and cons, right? Making the decision.
Exactly. When I was working with the Navy a couple of years ago, when Kessel Run was just a little spark in somebody's eye, and I got to go visit KR, and they were at Pivotal Cloud Foundry's location in DC. and got to tour it. And what I was able to take back and have for this particular command, for this particular PMW, was don't jump into this with Pivotal for the tool. You don't need another tool. What you need is to pivot on thinking about what your architecture looks like and how we're going to get you into a production situation that will allow you to have enduring capabilities. So I'm with you. It's a trade-off. Architectural trade-off is an important piece, and understanding your technical debt. By the way, one last plug on technical debt. Technical debt's not all bad. You just have to know about it. Sometimes you make that investment and then you pay it down because the dividends of doing something quickly or doing something in a different approach up front is well worth it. So I'm not a hater on tech debt. We just have to understand it. So I am a hater on human debt, which is what we've been talking about this whole time, is human debt.
Yes. No, absolutely. All right. So we have questions from the public now.
All right.
Before we run out of time. Here we go. So Christophe, who is French like me, and I've known him for 20 years before I was even in the US. So I'm gonna convert his French English to proper English just for the heck of it. But effectively, he's asking if you think that do you think DevOps is more of a role or more a method or methodology, whatever.
So I believe that it is more of a philosophy and a method. There are plenty of folks who have done recent surveys who would say that they believe it's a role. So I would argue with you. Tell me what your DevOps engineer does. What are they? What exactly are they doing? Are they setting up the pipeline? Are they building the capabilities that go across the pipeline? Or are they designing the software? So I think about all of us having a role in a system. All of us having a role in a value stream, and DevOps is a set of principles and capabilities. I wouldn't even call it a method. It's a set of principles and capabilities that we apply in order to get stuff into production and get the continuous feedback and such that we need.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's a methodology. And a DevSecOps engineer, I think the title is going to die. I think we need to come up with something, though, when it comes, because people use it mostly to describe someone that is responsible for the CI/CD pipeline, usually. And so I guess, how do you call the people that build the factory so people can use it to build mission software, whatever? I think
well, maybe talk about that digital platform team that we talked about. So you've got a team that's providing your platform, and then you have a team that's providing the products that are going to the end users. Those are different things. So maybe if we talk about it in terms of the platform and in terms of the product, and get away from DevOps engineers, because in some places I've been in the conversations where they say we need a DevOps engineer because we need to refactor the application. I'm like, I don't think that person is going to do the thing. So there's a certain messianic feel right now if you're going to get yourself a DevOps engineer. That having been said, that's one of the hottest job titles out there right now. Just tag yourself with DevOps engineer, and we'll go back to the beginning of our conversation, Nick. You'll be raking in the big dollars, warranted or not.
Yep. And there's a lot of money right now in DevSecOps. All right. So next question. Can we define healthy? So can you, I guess, define healthy culture and innovation for DoD? For Amazon, it means innovating to make profits. For DoD, it could mean various different things.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, commercial defines value in terms of profits. Mark Schwartz wrote The Art of The Art of Business Value, and he talks very specifically. We need to figure out different words because they're not financial in nature. If I look at some work that I did with some of the state levels with integrated eligibility, we needed to define value, and we looked at, for this particular thing, integrated eligibility means for health and human services that there are a lot of different programs that you may be eligible for, and so many of them were so independent of each other. So if we integrated the eligibility so that we could check out all these different business rules, we could find out more about how to help people. So we were able to come up with values such as how many people are being provided with heating oil in the winter in the northern states. Okay, that's a great number. We want to achieve this. We have this many people in a certain segment of this population that are at risk. That's a number that we can achieve. It's not a return on investment in a traditional. You're not reaping profits from it as you would think. So it's in defining your value in terms of what your mission is. I will tell you one of the most interesting ones. The first time that you were part of a discussion about the kill chain. And what the kill chain is, and the kill chain note is not specifically about a chain where you're going to kill people. That's not what it is. The kill chain is about identifying threats, determining what your next action is, and then shutting down that chain of events for the protection of good on both sides. How do you measure that? I would argue that sometimes it's that we brought the soldier home safely. But I think that when we're talking about munitions, when we're talking about integrated combat systems, defining value is very different. But I want to go to the very beginning of that question. How do you define a healthy culture and innovation? Understand your value, right? So we define the value, get buy-in against that. Getting to healthy culture is allowing people to rapidly experiment, rapidly succeed or fail, however you want to say it, providing that innovation and then helping them to operationalize on innovation. Because it isn't just all about experimenteering and coming up with cool stuff. You actually have to be able to operationalize it. And there's a lot more to it than I just have this cool code and we're just going to try it here and then put it into production. So that healthy culture tracks back to everybody having that same value, defining that together. And a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about today, about the training, about the support for people, about giving them opportunities.
All right, good. All right, so Tim has a question, but I'm not sure, I guess, when he asked the question. So he was curious. So, he said being curious involves asking the right questions. What questions are your favorite? I would assume he was stuck here about the training or the interview of people. I'm not sure.
So my favorite question is not about Kubernetes. Putting it out there, it's not.
I'm going to shut down the show.
No, you're not. No, you're not. So those are fun questions. Those are the sprinkles on the ice cream, right? Those are the Skittles and rainbows questions. Those are the fun ones.
You ask them how much they love me.
Well, no, I have not asked that in too many interviews lately, but I could start to do that, and we'll see if that's a weed out question or is that an automatic hire. So
I don't know. It depends. Some people, depends.
So I think, this idea of being curious involves asking the right questions. I don't know if I want to say the right questions. It involves asking questions, period. So my personal philosophy and approach to things and how I stay curious is that I don't take things at face value. Anybody who knows me knows that I question everything. Sometimes I'm asking the right question. Sometimes I'm not. And so you will learn to ask better questions and become more of a sleuth when it comes to learning. If the question specifically from Tim is about how do you, what kinds of questions should you be asking, or what my favorite questions are, I don't have necessarily a single favorite. The ones that I appreciate are the ones that make me noodle a lot. The ones that really make me step back on my heels and have to investigate it even further. I'm okay with my questions being silly. I'm also okay if my questions teach me that what's already being done actually best fits. So you're right that, Tim, that being curious does involve asking questions. I don't think there's a right question.
All right. So Joe had the question, but I don't know the context. It's always tough. Guys, you need to write longer questions. Is this similar to productization? I think that's when you were talking about the interview being virtual and all that, not with human.
I wonder if he's talking about that, or possibly about, we're talking about product teams and the difference between product teams who are building, not being projects anymore and moving towards being products.
That
might be that.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
And so I don't know how to answer this question exactly. Look, generally, we don't code, load, and hit the road anymore. projects in a waterfall world had a beginning and an end. And over the duration of getting to that end, requirements would change, people would learn more. That's why we don't want to have projects anymore. Generally, we want to have products because they're going to be long-lived. They're going to be enduring. The way that we get to those products oftentimes involves bringing it down a level to having platform teams that are helping us as well. So yeah, that's it's definitely fuzzy topics, but glad to chat about them more.
Indeed. All right. So this was the last question from the public. We're almost at time anyways, but I always give, I guess, almost the last words, because I still will tell people after you what's coming on the show next and a few things. So don't just leave, but I'm going to leave you, some time to close up.
Oh gosh. Gee, what should I close about? Look, at the end of the day, all the things that we've talked about today seem touchy and feely and non-technical in nature. And I can tell you firsthand that if we don't address this, we're not going to be able to do the tech stuff that we love, period. So get over it. If you are not an empathetic individual, fake being empathetic, portray and model those behaviors until you learn empathy. It is one of the best and most valuable things that you can do. It has made a difference to me. A number of people point out to me where I am biased in certain ways, where I am shaming other people. I recently talked about camera shaming. I've been doing this for so long. I don't think anything about being on camera, but I've camera shamed some people, like, get on the camera with me, be there. So yeah, I think that that's an important part, is getting to the heart of this is people first. We are not going to accomplish any of the technical challenges if we don't deal with people first, be cognizant of where they are in their journey, and actually attempt to support and engage and care about them. Because we don't care about each other, none of this stuff matters anyways.
Indeed. Well, Tracy, wanted to thank you again for joining us. This was awesome as always, but I was expecting it. So, you delivered, over-delivered. Wanted to thank you to take the 2 hours of your time. Also wanted to remind everybody to subscribe on the youtube.com/Nicolas Chelon channel. Hit the little bell so you can get notifications for the next videos coming on Kubernetes and Service Mesh and stuff like that. On next Tuesday, 1 p.m., we're going to get a great guest coming, real expert, multiple decades of expertise in identity management and how to secure your stack after the big breach of Okta by Lapsus, and trying to show a little bit what does that entail for organizations. What do you think about when you're trying to provide a proper cyber stack around your identity management for person entity and non-person entity? It's going to be at 1 p.m. next Tuesday. And I'm going to have a special guest the Tuesday after that, who is a congressman. And after that, the 26th at 1 p.m., we're going to get the great Stuart Schiller, the Marine that resigned and made quite a bit of noise, like I did, after the debacle in Afghanistan, to come and join the show and talk to us about what he did and what he's up to now, and if he would change anything from what he's done. Is he had quite a lot of headaches, unlike me. So that was much easier for me to do what I did. So I think you're gonna have fun, and you're probably not gonna want to miss the Stuart announcement. That's for sure. So stay tuned, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Tracy. Bye-bye.
You betcha. Ciao.